excited too for the first time in, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that. Feels like the three of us have not been around each other for a minute. So, some people like to travel and do things, and others, sometimes their signal doesn't always work, which
Mike.
I resemble
you
that
know,
remark.
so, and then sometimes we forget that it's a holiday. So that's said, beyond grateful for everybody to be here today. We're so excited to have you. And we are covering a variety of topics each week. And this week in particular, we're talking about how leaders are discerning, or if you'd like to say discerners, you can say that as well. When I was originally writing, that's what I wrote, but it didn't come off the tongue right. So I kept with discerning. And this really stems a lot from our talk last week about how leaders are rational. And next week, a little foreshadowing for you, we're going to talk about leaders are problem solvers. But really, once you get down to the core of being a more rational leader, because let's all be honest, we're not perfect. We've had our moments and probably will have another one. I know I will. I'll speak for myself on that. Mike laughed, so we'll let him have that later. But the point is when you do start to think more rationally and you become more rational, you do start to see a greater picture of discernment. And the thing with discernment is such an important word. We talk about it a lot at Givers University, that Mike and I have mentioned from time to time on the show, because discernment is so important. It is so important in life, period. Even if, and I always stem from the background of, a leader doesn't have to be somebody of rank, title, and position. As much as it is that if you are leading your life and you're helping lead others, you don't have to be, a promoted officer in a company or an executive or anything like that. And so when you think of things more rationally, you start to see a better, wider picture of discernment. Or say you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur, or even solopreneur. And we get a barrage of things thrown at us. I mean, I could show you email and text message upon email upon text message, day in and day out of spam stuff, let alone the stuff that probably more legit than some of the spam that's coming through. And you've got to be able to take that time to look at, is this right for me? More importantly, is this what God is showing me because he wants me to do it? Or because maybe I can say, hey, I support you in this. I appreciate it. This is not for me right now. And there's nothing wrong with any of those answers, other than if you're just trying to join everything and you don't look in anything at all, which I've done. I'm guilty of, and I lost a lot of money because of it. I've even lost a few friendships because of it. And that happens, unfortunately. But the thing is, as we think more rationally, we can think with more discernment. So, Jim, I'm going to come to you first. How do you view discernment in your own life, and how, because the three of us are very involved in a lot of different business ventures, how do you start to view discernment with a fine lens, but an open perspective and open view?
Apparently, he's so overwhelmed by it, he can't.
He's got so much discernment, he wanted to leave his microphone off.
So that is something I had to work on. I had to discern what was going on. But I see it as a logical pathway to make a decision, discernment, right? To discern. And I think that in terms of weaving it in to keep a clear perspective of the bigger picture, I think one thing is that you have to have a certain foundational system, structure, whatever you want to call it, to discern from. If you said, hey, well, or a belief system, like, you say, hey, if we was to say men were stronger than women, let's say, and we had some contests, I think we can have some good judgment that men would probably win if it was on strength. Okay, dexterity, maybe something different. But I view discernment as really being able to make good decisions based on on facts at hand. So that's the way I would see it.
Yeah, and that's excellent. That actually brought me to another point too. When it comes to discernment and decision making, don't think you got it all figured out. Sometimes, honestly, as crummy as this is going to sound, and Mike, I'll be coming to you for this. As crummy as this can sound, sometimes you have to make the wrong decisions. in order to figure out what the right ones were. And I say have to, I don't really like that term, but let me rephrase that. You're going to. That one that I lost a bunch of money, not the only one, unfortunately, but lost a bunch of money on. I tell you what, I learned a lot about asking questions and discernment and finding out more before I said, oh, this just sounds great. Here's my check, here's my money. And it just didn't work out so well. And so, Mike, sometimes trials and struggles are quasi required in life. Jesus even said, for in this world, you will have trouble. Take heart, I've overcome the world. So, what is your perspective on learning so you can discern better?
Well, everything's a gift if you're willing to look at it that way. Yeah. Now, we've all been around people, and maybe we've been one of those people in our life. I know I have from time to time where, it's that woe is me mentality, and the world is crashing down on me. But you can find a gift in that, and that's part of discernment, really. There's so much to talk about on this topic. Mm-hmm. We're probably gonna have to expand for another couple hours. But I was thinking about this prior to the show. Napoleon Hill, right? Short of the Bible, probably wrote one of the most important books of all time. And he named that book Think and Grow Rich. He didn't name that book Forget About It, Grow Rich. He didn't write How to Go Faster and Grow Rich. He named it Think and Grow Rich. And that should be an important clue into what we need to do. Now, what's interesting about that is we happen to be in a culture and a society, and a lot of companies fall into this trap, right? Especially if they're public companies, because then it comes down to how much can we churn out this quarter? It's all about quarter. What's the return this quarter? This quarter. I need more this quarter. We didn't do great last quarter. We got to do more this quarter. Now, and it's all about speed. And that only works if you have a good game plan and you've discerned your way through and thought through and you have a good strategy. Otherwise, might not work out so good for you. And so I think in a time and a place where we're all worried about how fast our internet is, can I get a faster phone? Can I get a faster computer? Can I get through the drive-through faster? Can I get from point A to point B faster? Yeah, you can do all those things, but at what risk? At what risk? And so I can only speak for myself, but I'm certainly finding at this point in my life that more times than not, I have to slow down in order to speed up. And when I slow down, that means maybe I've made a decision, but that decision may play out over time. And so you've got to have the ability to play things forward. Stephen Covey called it thinking with the end in mind. So, you got to think with the end in mind and what it is that you really want to achieve. Because sometimes speeding up may give you quick wins, but you might not win the war.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that's one of the amazing things about discernment. And it's one of those things where something I hope, and I've worked on with preaching and teaching the youth, including my own children, one of which is an adult age, is, they get into this go mode, and they just start doing everything everyone else is telling them to, and they don't do what they would want to do. Now, I'm not saying, I'm out for anybody who goes, you mean just let them hang off the stuff and do it? No. My oldest, when we were, it was senior Friday, for the football games, and it was everybody that was in fall sports and marching band, and all the seniors are announced, and if they're going to college or if they're doing things, and band went last so they could take the field so they could play the fight song and all this and that. And so, and our last name's Tice, so we're like dang near the end of the line.
I got you beat.
Huh?
I got you beat.
Well, you weren't there, so deal with it. This is my moment, Mike, of pity. Pity. Folks, we're going to get the leaders are fun at the end of the year, I promise. Have fun. But, the thing is, he was sitting there, and he was kind of, for lack of a better term, self-loathing. And I looked and I said, what's wrong? He's like, it just doesn't feel right. I'm like, what doesn't feel right? Like I'm sitting here thinking like high school's over, you know, like this is it, son. You know, like I think this talk is coming on. He goes, I feel like such a loser right now.
Mm.
And yeah, oh man, just thinking about it still crushes my heart.
Mm.
And I said, what? I said, what? Really? You're one of one of the most liked kids, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no. He goes, Dad, they're not even halfway through the list, and I'm the only one not going to school. I was like, well, first of all, it's not true. Secondly, it's only a quarter year class. And thirdly, who cares? Who cares? But because of this sped up society, you got to do this, and this. 4 years in high school goes very, very fast, as I'm sure the three of us can attest to, whether remember your own days in high school, or especially if you got kids, it goes even faster. And I told him, I said, slow it down for a second, kiddo. I said, why would you even go to school? And I'm not going to go into the whole thing. The point was, it was so sped up that he started thinking he had to go to school and hurry up and get to school and hurry up and go fill out all the applications. He had no idea what he was even going to study or what couple things he was going to study, why he even wanted to study it. Mm-hmm. So, Jim, you know, something that I find very important, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is that one word, why? It's so important. You know, Mike's talking about, you know, the people wanting to get there fast. I actually, a good friend of ours, I just found out that one of them was in a motorcycle accident. Yeah. And the thing is, the person driving the truck that hit him was in such a hurry, they were trying to beat him to the light. And so instead of pausing for what, 3 minutes of a stoplight, 3 minutes, now they're in a wreck, and that's half an hour to an hour, depending on police reports, cleanup, everything else depends on where they're at. It can be shorter than that, but for the most part, you're looking at a good 15, 20 minutes at least, let alone everything else that goes on with that. So, Jim, why is it so important to ask yourself, or if you're coaching someone else, why?
Well, I think the word why is always a good question. I mean, you can do a lot of things, and you have to see what you're trying to achieve. You know, discernment, the simple definition is good judgment. We can call it common sense. I believe that would be a good thing. And so to ask yourself why you do things, you can do things just to get things done quickly. And if you don't ask yourself why, then you could be doing a lot of things that doesn't lead to the results of where you're trying to get to. There was one, I can't remember who it was directly, but he basically, they talked about basically winning a battle, but winning it, it's called, I think it's the Parawick. I believe it's Parawick. The Parawick, I forgot the exact name, but basically it's winning at such a big cost. Like you lose, you know, all of your men, but maybe you quote unquote had the last man standing, but everybody wins, you know? And, you know, I mean, you win technically, but you at such great loss, it's really a loss for everyone, you know? So if you're going to try to achieve something, maybe winning a war, but you say, well, we're going to wage war, but you know that you're going to, maybe you can completely annihilate the other person, but you're pretty much annihilated yourself. You're just one man standing. If you don't use discernment and understand why you're doing something, you can end up doing a lot of things where you end up actually losing out because you're going down the wrong path, you're using the wrong tool because you were told to do something, right? And we all hear that one story just real quickly about the ham. You know, the ham, they put it in the oven, and basically, you know, a girl sees her mother take the ham, cut off both ends, and then puts it in the oven. So she grows up doing the same thing. And then her daughter asks her, well, why do you cut off both ends of the ham? And it was, well, I don't know, you know, maybe it makes it juicier. You know, let me ask grandma. And grandma busted up and said, oh, I cut them off because our pants were shorter, you know? And so you have to ask yourself why you are doing things. And that's so key when you want to move forward. Otherwise, you might find yourself really not taking the best path, not doing the best thing, not having the best tools to do something. So ask yourself why you are doing something and how you're doing it is so very important.
Oh, so good. So good, Jim. And I was thinking of the book um, by Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And that was
Mhm.
my point to bringing up the story of my son was I looked at it and said, why does it even matter? Kid hated school, still does, and not the best student. I was like, you realize your freshman and sophomore year of college are basically a repeat of junior and senior year with a couple added components. And then you finally get to start doing some of the things you like, depending on your degree choice. And that's my point, coming back to what Mike was saying was we're in such a hurry these days. We're in such a hurry.
We are.
Ironically enough, a clinic that I do work with called the Docera Life Center has a podcast. And their last episode was talking about environmental frequencies. And one of the topics that was brought up was all these different high tech things, 5G and Wi Fi and all this and that. We're in such a hurry to get information, such a hurry to speed things up. There was actually a committee that was formed to try and at least hold off on releasing the 5G network because of the
Mhm.
potential health risks that come with that. And so the biggest thing was like, here we were in this hurry. They went ahead and got it through anyways. And the committee actually formally came up and said we should put this on pause. And yet here we are, everybody's 5G. Oh, my phone's that much quicker. Is it really that much faster? Is it really? I don't think it is. But that's the thing is we're not as a human race, as a society, we are not taking the time to slow down and have full discernment of what is the potential impact of this.
Yeah.
You even look at, and then I'll admit guilt in this too. You look at, being a college age student or in your 20s when you were doing things you knew you shouldn't have been doing because you were in such a hurry to have such a great time that in the long run you think back on it, you're like, I shouldn't have done all that. Which I unfortunately said more than once in my 20s, just being honest. That's the thing is we're losing this ability to have discernment because we just want to go so fast. And so, Mike, we got to reverse this somehow. What are your thoughts on at least just trying to teach this next generation or get out and coach? Mike's a true man life coach, and I've got a feeling, because I know him and I have discussed this types of things more than once. I've got a feeling it's come up a few times. So how do we slow it down without taking away, advances in technology and stuff, but at least taking a little more time to say, time out. What's the full picture here? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you one word. Pause. You see how I did that? Pause for sure. Let me tell you. I had a bunch of stuff going on this morning. And then I got a text about my aunt in the hospital. And then I got a text from a very close personal friend whose daughter's really going through some challenging times, had to be removed from the house, physically restrained because of harm that she was doing to the family. And they're really going through some challenges. And I get that text today, basically, just pray for me. And I thought, wow, this is quite the morning here. And I thought to myself, stop what you're doing immediately and just pause. And, in that moment, I prayed and I recentered myself. Now, I had a full slate of stuff going on today. But in that moment, that was more important, because I needed to put myself in. I had people that needed more love than I needed in that moment, first and foremost. But I needed to put myself in the right mental frame of mind. And I think that's part of the critical thinking skills that comes with discernment. I think discernment can be taught. I think it is a skill. I'll tell you, last week I was on a phone call and I saw discernment live and in action. Now, I can't do a replay because there would be too much silence instead of talking. But many times, and silence doesn't make for a great podcast. But when you're being asked a question or you're being given information, it doesn't always require an immediate response. Sometimes it requires a 10-second pause or a 20-second pause Maybe it requires a 2-minute pause. But it does require time to think through what's going on, because what comes out of your mouth is more than just in the moment, an in the moment answer. That in the moment answer could affect somebody for a lifetime. If, one way or another, good or bad, right? Especially if somebody comes to you for advice. And so, stopping to pause, I think, is one of the more important things. And I talk about this more and more all the time. And, I'll be honest and tell you, it is an exercise for me to learn how to do it, because my reaction is the same as everybody else's, right? I'm just going to give you an immediate answer. And that might not be, in fact, more times than not, now if somebody asks you, hey, you want to go for hamburgers or hot dogs? Okay, well, give them a straight up answer. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about very, they could be really important personal decisions. They could be really important business decisions. And if it's business, I mean, there could be lives on the line here, and I mean that literally. I don't mean that somebody's going to necessarily die, but financially, you could affect somebody's life in a very negative way by saying something the wrong way or making a harsh decision. I know we've experienced that in this house, and it sucks, So, I think one of the more important things that we can learn to do is pause.
Yeah, and I think that's such a critical skill that we need to start teaching more and more, even at the younger ages.
Yeah.
I remember, especially when I got into my 30s, I started asking questions. I was, when does this slow down? When does this happen? When does that happen? It must be like, oh, yeah, when you get to your 40s, that's when things start. And I started thinking about it. And it took me a little bit longer to figure it out now that I am in my 40s. But I started thinking about it. I was like, why are we teaching it like this? Why do I have to wait till my 40s before I start making better decisions, start asking more questions? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the most important thing we could do is teach that to our children, because here's what's happening in the here he comes. He's about to get up on his box. Here's what's happening to our children. They're being told what to say, how to think, and what to do because our school systems are failing us,
to say the least.
And so, if we as parents don't teach our kids how to discern, they'll learn it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And so, it's important that as family leaders that we teach our children how to discern. And honestly, I think for a lot of parents, this is probably foreign territory. I would say the same is true for me. This is not something that I've really thought a lot. It's always been a part of me, but I didn't stop to digest the importance of it probably until later in my life here.
Yeah. And, so, ooh, all right, I'll get into this for a second. I actually made, as a youth pastor and a youth leader, I made some parents mad because I was already doing this, because I was like, I don't want to see this next generation waiting till they're my age to go, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Now, I wasn't necessarily asking that so much as I was just learning a better skill of discernment. But I sat here and I was like, they should not be waiting this long to have this. And I'd have so many of these kids come up to me, Chris, can you pray for me? Chris, can you pray for me? Of course, that answer is always yes. And I say, what for? Like, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. Well, let's talk about that first. Then we'll pray into it. Or we can start with prayer, whatever you want. But, so many of them, my parents tell me I have to go to school. And I said, what are you going to school for? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to school for. Like, then why are you going to school? I don't know. It's like, have you talked to them about that? Have you told them that? And so many of them, I had several that they wanted to go straight down the military tract, and then let the military pay for the school. And some of the parents are like, I will just pay for it, no big deal. Like, I don't know what I want to do. At least I could go do something that is a service, obviously, which much love and respect to all our service members, by the way, thank you. but you know, they were like, I'm not, I could do this, this, and this. And I talked to the recruiter, and this is where I would be, and everything else, which I'm not going to get into the whole weeds of. That may or may not end up being true. But the thing is, they had a path, but they were being told something else, even by their own parents. I'm not knocking parenting. Believe me, I'm not the perfect parent. I promise you that. However, I saved my son tens of thousands, over a minimum of $50,000. So I couldn't pay it. Would have loved to have. For him to actually go get the actual job skills in the areas he was looking at doing, to find out he didn't like it. And he made money instead. Now he's doing something totally different. So fast forward a couple years from that discussion on the track with him on that senior Friday. Senior night is what they call it. Never mind. There we go. I said, how many of your friends are back home from college? He goes, quite a few. I said, how many of them have changed their degree once, twice, maybe even 3 times now, because he would be a senior this year. He goes, quite a few. I said, how many of them have switched schools because they found out they hated where they were going because they didn't actually take the time to research and do what they needed to do? He goes, quite a few. I said, how many adults do you think there are out there that are in careers that they hate and they're miserable? Or people who have said things or done things that they hate and they're miserable because they didn't take the time to ask why. Or in our case, what we're discussing today, have discernment over the very decisions that influence, impact, and inspire, or should inspire, our lives if the first two are positive and massive. Positive influence, massive impact, great inspiration. 3 eyes of great leadership. And this one centers around all 3 of those. Each and every time I think about it. I've made my mistakes. I'm sure I'll make some more. Not proud of it, don't like it, gonna learn from it. And that's something I feel like is a continuing theme here is not only do we need to remember to ask why and to slow down, or Mike, what was it called overseas in the car?
I just put out a fresh blog on this, by
You're
the
welcome.
way.
You're welcome.
The traffic calming, which I have called the calming zone.
Traffic calming zone. That's what they would say if for those that didn't see last week's episode, which I highly recommend going to. But it's the calming zone as you're coming up to the stop. Like, just saying that makes me feel better about the floor I drove through today. You know, I mean, when I say drove through, I stopped. All right, I stopped before he misses anything. But anyways, calm down for a second, and I want to go through another Bible verse here, and then we'll close out today. It's in the book of James. There's trials and temptations. James 1. This is right at the start, which I actually had somebody, and I'm going to have greater discussions on this, and I've not had anybody disagree with me, that James is actually the New Testament version of Proverbs. Take that one into thought for a second as you're doing your studies. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish. Slow it down. Let it finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and be given to you. Of course, it goes on to say, believe and don't doubt. Believe and don't doubt. Don't doubt yourself, because God has put this in you. It's not to say you may not have to learn some things the hard way. You know, as much as I'm trying to pass on to my kids and everything else, I have to just accept the fact they may just have to learn the hard way. We went roller skating yesterday. One of the kids listened to me and started doing it right. The other kid has a very bruised tailbone. And he's not happy about it. And I do feel bad. I really do. But I was like, hey, kiddo, I know that hurts. He's like, how do you know it hurts? And I did it because I didn't listen. You know, and it's more he just slipped. But, you know, the point is, folks, is we've got to slow it down. Listen to what God is telling us. Listen to your own intuition. Listen to your gut. Your gut has feelings too. You know, they say the stomach is the second brain. Listen. Think about the things that are being presented to you. Slow it down. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given on the fire department when I became a young acting officer was slow it down. I mean, obviously we would, you know, get into the things we needed to get into because it wasn't just about fires. It was about everything I was doing, whether it was paperwork, working with my crews, because in that moment, I'm not a firefighter. I'm an officer. Or on a fire. You know, hey, you're the one that's got to take the bigger picture. Your driver has to jump out, make sure the hose is out, and charge the line. Person on the nozzle, getting ready to go in. You're looking at everything they're doing, make sure it's all working out well. So take that extra second, split second, slow it down and look at what you got going. Same thing in life, same thing in business, same thing with your kids. Before you just started going off and yelling at them because it's like the 18,000th time you've told them to stop doing something. Ask yourself why you're upset. Ask yourself why they keep doing it. Ask yourself, why does any of this happen? Why am I being asked this question? Why are people bothering me? Why are they sending me these text messages? Man, they're trying to make money just like I am. I'm ignoring most of them because some of them are very, 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 very inappropriate, but whatever. Apparently they found a way, and here's the thing: if I'm still getting them, somebody's clicking the link. Y'all should probably stop doing that. Just saying. So, anyways, Jim, how do we reach out to you and follow up from you?
Well, first off, I wanted to say this topic on discernment. I was thinking about this. Honestly, I'd been a little bit of sleep deprived since this weekend, so I was just trying to really lock in on what you're saying. First off, I just want to make one comment that discernment, just pausing is so important. That moment of pause determines how we either react or respond. Somebody throws something at you, you could just immediately react. Maybe the person tripped and it didn't, they didn't mean to hit you. Maybe said they got something going on in their life. I'm not trying to excuse it if it was an intentional throw, but to understand where things are at, assess the situation and make good judgment. Don't just react, but respond. But I love this whole thing because that's what leadership's all about. And it really is about really having good discernment, having good judgment. Doesn't mean perfect judgment, doesn't mean being right, just using judgment. So you can reach me at jimtchong.com or, of course, zoomturtle.com to find out the myriad of things that are going on. But really appreciate this talk on discernment and makes me think more about when I'm around people. Because, especially with what I do when you're dealing with a lot of different types of people, different sorts of situations, you have to have discernment. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Mike, final thoughts, and how do we get a hold of you?
My final thoughts are, and I'm going to bring this up again, that discernment is a skill, can be taught, can be learned, should be learned. And, yeah, well, here's how you can learn a little bit more about it. Talk to Chris or I, and we can get you involved in a Give to Be Great series of training that is absolutely phenomenal. And you can learn how to become an exceptional discerner.
Yeah.
Did I say that right? Is that a word? Exceptional discerner? I think that it just sounded weird. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to have a higher quality of life, and discernment is going to help you make sound decisions. And I know that I'm being taught that every day, and my quality of life is improving as a result of it. I see it parallel. So you can get a hold of me. Just send me an email at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. You can go out to my website at truemanlifecoaching.com. And you will also find my podcast, the True Man Podcast, out there as well. So that's how you can get a hold of me.
Love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for today. Mike's right. We could go on for hours on this topic. It's so important. And it's something that's not being taught, or it's not being taught right. People, oh yeah, I teach it all the time. It's like, well, show me the material.
It's definitely not being taught right.
Yeah, you're forcing people to do what you want them to do, or the way you're trying to sales pitch them is buy, and then you forget them. So you literally go bye when you do it. Yeah. And that's just it's just so nasty, and it's creating a lot of tension in this world, and it's something that I hate seeing, because it doesn't need to be that way. And so, yes, there's going to be trouble, there's going to be mistakes. We're human, we make mistakes. However, even in the instance of someone making a mistake, we have the discernment to forgive them. Have the discernment to hear out their side of the story instead of just lashing out on them. This comes back to, talking last week about being rational. I like being known as a rational leader. The more rational you are, the greater discernment you will have. And then next week, like I said at the start of the show, we're going to be talking about leaders are, and in some cases you can say as, because that's where it's probably going to go next week, problem solvers. Because that's what we do. That's what leaders do without even having to have rank, title, or position. You can have full discernment over your own life and over the lives of those around you, especially those that are directly responding with you, your kids, your coworkers, your bosses, those that you manage, your spouse, those at church, your neighbors, whoever it may be. This extends anywhere and everywhere we go. And let's all be honest, wherever you're watching this from, whether you're seeing this live or you're watching the replay, this world needs a lot more of it. Period. You'd like to know more? Yes, you can reach me at chris@eaglefiremenrichmond.com, or you can go to my website, www.eaglefiremenrichmond.com. Either way, would love to continue this conversation with you and set you and or your company up for success in having greater discernment in their leadership skills. So, as always, we have the great and amazing Jim T. Chong, the Walk Star. We have Mike Van Pelt, host of True Man Life Coaching and True Man Podcast. I love that podcast, by the way. I'm even catching up on episodes from the past because we haven't known each other the whole time he's had it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So, and of course, Jim's always got karaoke events going on, and you go to zoomturtle.com, it just keeps going and going and going because, you know, he does a lot. My point is, gentlemen, I know we live very busy lives, so I'm beyond grateful for you both always, you know, staying faithful and loyal to coming on here and sharing your wisdom and thoughts with all of us. And to all those that are watching or rewatching this, you know, later on, beyond appreciative for you. So until next week, when we are back at 1:30 p.m. Central, right here at the True Leadership Show, we always say, have your best day ever by making every day great. Remember, you can't never did. God bless us all. We'll see you next time.